Delivering people's cars humbles you, being teased by the mechanic.
What were you observing in terms of your dad dealing with losing everything he'd worked for?
Very few things could put him down. Not going to school, teaching himself how to ride, to starting a cinema, to starting a bottle store, to having nothing. And his first word to me was, let's try and buy a van so we can sell vegetables on the road. For him, it wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a new chapter. I said to JP Morgan, I'm here no more than 5 years. I need to go and rebuild what my dad started. Our first deal was 500,000 rand. And our first big break was tell my kids the other superpowers is being dyslexic.
What fears do you have?
I think hiring the wrong people and not spending enough time with my kids. I think in 97 when he died, and I still have that piece of paper, one day I'll make you proud.
Khudu, you are here.
Good morning.
Thank you for being on the show with me and having a conversation about your failure.
Pleasure.
What made you say yes? We were talking off camera and you said you don't do podcasts. In fact, we are your first one, which is fantastic. What made you say yes to talking about failure?
I think your ability to mentor others, and so my dear wife was like, she has a brilliant mind. Just go, and I said, I'll do it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So to kick us off,
Yeah.
I love asking our guests how they define failure.
No.
What is failure to Khudu?
I think it's part of life's journey. So you have your highs and lows, and it's how quickly do you learn from your lows and go back to the equilibrium. And it's never the end. It's just part of the lessons.
Yeah. And growing up, how did your definition evolve as experience teaches most of us?
No, I've got an interesting journey from what probably in the 80s was termed black middle class in the townships to the politicians destroying everything my dad had built in the 80s to a family that went from middle class to nothing. And I was fortunate that at St. Andrews College, I was given a scholarship to stay there. And from standard 8, I think, until I finished. So, and that journey taught me seeing my father saying, there's nothing in the house. My mom, fortunately, managed to get a job at Netcare Rosebank Clinic.
Yeah.
And the hospital provided a 1-bedroom apartment. So when I started working at the age of 19, my first job was an intern at the Lindsay Saker here in Rosebank. So where Standard Bank building is, that used to be a petrol station and a Lindsay Saker.
What is this? The cars or an agency?
Yes, the car dealership. So they gave me my scholarship at St. Andrews. Then when I couldn't get a bursary for university, I took a taxi off to Bedfordview to go and see the execs. And I said, look, though you can pay me as little as you want, but just give me a loan to go to varsity. And that was the deal with them, that if I passed, that loan became a bursary. And from delivering people's cars humbles you, from private school to sitting for lunch with everyone, from the petrol attendant to the mechanic to being teased by the mechanics about, I think it was the Beetle having a water pump or something. I don't know, Carl. So, and you learned life journey. And the one thing my dad has always taught me is stay humble, from the lady that opens the door or makes tea for you to the exec, the treatment should be the same. And I think that helped me. So raised by a community leader who couldn't go to school. So he finished only, I think, standard 4.
Yeah.
So humility along the way and the ups and the downs, and being the first one to get a tertiary qualification on his side of the family. His brother was a famous lawyer. The Pitje chambers in town, they're named after him, but my dad didn't finish school.
Yeah. What were you observing in terms of your dad dealing with losing everything he'd worked for? As a child at the time, I'm just curious, like, how are you feeling in that moment and what are you learning?
He was, very, very few things could put him down. From not going to school, teaching himself how to write, to starting a cinema, to starting a bottle store, being a mayor of a township with no schooling and building pretty much Mamelodi, what we term as Mamelodi Township, and to having nothing. And his first word to me was, let's try and buy a van so we can sell vegetables on the road. So, and for him, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter. And he was much older than my mom. So I think even when that happened, he was probably in his late 60s. So to get such a blow in your late 60s.
Sure. When a lot of people can't believe you can start over.
That's it. And but for whatever reason, I was still too young to help him. But whilst he had his businesses, that was the start of my counting lesson. So he taught me how to count. So I used to write on a piece of paper and count. And I still do carry one. And I don't use a calculator.
Oh, the carry wise. And friends tease me. To that.
Paying bills
at 1, 3.
Paying bills at restaurants. They're like, so you're just gonna add it up like that? I said, yes. So
nice.
So he then from there, I guess my mom, whilst helping him build the businesses, she focused on education. So she started studying and doing some part-time work at Netcare, and that's how she rescued our family home in Soshanguve, because she asked them for a payslip. So the day it was supposed to go for an auction, she got a payslip and rescued it, and that's pretty much the only thing that we rescued. But they stayed firm and supported us through it, and even going to St. Andrews, I knew pocket money wasn't something I'm going to get. So that also got me going, and started a hair salon at St. Andrews, which I don't think was legal, but somebody had to give me pocket money. And that's when I would do S-curls for people. Those days we used to call it S-curls. And that was a way for me to, I think we called it Ninos. So there was like 4 friends to process the really horrible, smelly chemicals. The relaxer, and then 2 were the hair cutters. So he taught me it's never the end. You just have to pivot and try something else.
Yeah. How has your business journey grown over the time? Because I know that you are a hugely successful business leader and entrepreneur.
It was, I guess I carried from there, realizing I need to be a CA. So then I became a CA, went to JP Morgan. And I remember my first international trip wasn't by choice. It was, what could I afford? So I looked at, I think it's Flight Center, you go and look and you're like, I can't afford this. And then I saw Thailand, and I just went and I thought, let me experience abroad. So when the opportunity came to work in London, I grabbed it with both hands. At this point, that was, I think, in my late 20s. And then ended up working for JP Morgan in the UK and traveled to New York, so the big bankers in New York. But I've always said to JP Morgan, I'm here no more than 5 years. I need to go and rebuild what my dad started. And then quit in 2004, August. My first day back from the UK, I said to them, I don't want to use your resources to set up my business, so I'm going to quit immediately. And from there, it was, let's build, So our first deal, I think, was a 500,000 Rand vendor finance consulting business, So, and
that was huge at the time, being your first.
My first, yes. And we actually still own 30% of the business. It's called Shangoni Management Services. And they've just celebrated their 25th year. So, and And you go from big banker to now you're making your own coffee laptop, you're the IT person. So, and we grew from there. I was fortunate that in the UK, I focused on telecommunications. So from equipment providers to mobile operators. So I started learning their strategy, spotting what they were trying to do. So when my first big break came in was to bring in a UK telco infrastructure business into South Africa called Dick.
Yeah.
We set them up, established, I actually ran the business, grew them from nothing to about 60 million turnover. Then someone at ABSA spotted this and said, hang on, you're not just a banker, you know how to operate businesses.
Yeah.
And they said, look, the last time they did a B deal for someone to invest was with Mvela Pandey. So I must make an application.
Yeah.
And I applied, and it was, I think, 10 slides of this is how I can do it.
Yeah.
And back then, it was, I think, 5 people who stood in a room and said, tell us how. And I told them, and they said, why don't you need a lot of working capital? Most of the applicants need 20 million. You just put like even 3 million is fine. I'll be fine. And I said, well, it's about building the business versus living a lavish life. I think people forget that it is a big sacrifice and it doesn't stop, so the bets become bigger. So back then, 100,000 bet was big. Today, it just gets bigger. You just put zeros in front of it. And we went from there, and our first big break was when I was assembling a telecommunication equipment strategy, and ABSA told me they have a preference share in a business in Pretoria called, back then, CIE Telecoms. And it was guys who had built Dimension Data. Some of them have built businesses before, who were supporting entrepreneurs to run their businesses. So they had businesses in East Rand, in Midrand. There was one called Clearline that still does search protection. And so I said, well, instead of me replicating this, let me join you. So then we acquired 37% of it.
Okay.
And it happens just at the time the telecommunication sector was going through a change. Where we were going from waiting for Telkom to provide you a line at your house to the regulator saying anybody can put up fiber. And we then spotted that, and a group of engineers approached us saying they found these trucks that were produced by the Marais Group in France, and were we interested to bring them in. We brought them in, and they looked at that time like Neotel. So Neotel, I guess now it's called Liquid Telecoms.
Yes, Liquid.
Yeah, and because they were orange, everybody was cursing Neotel for cutting the side of the road, and we just kept quiet. So we said, look, well, brand association, and you quickly learn that when you are a B2B back end of another business, you don't have to scream and shout and tell people who you are. You just stay quite low profile. And we then started raising capital, and then someone asked us, do you have a telecommunication license? We said, no, we're just putting ducts and fiber. We're not a telco company. And the municipalities didn't know how to deal with us, so we ended up just getting one.
The license.
Yes, and today that business is known as DFA, which is part of a group with Vumatel, Herotel, which Vodacom's just acquired at 30% of. So just being a 30-year-old young black child from Soshanguve, who was raised by a father who didn't go to school, to be part of a group of entrepreneurs who connected the first undersea cable, I think through Mtunzini. I think it's Mtunzini. It landed there. And it was the first time it was being connected by anyone other than Telkom.
Sure.
And I was 31 and sitting around the boardroom, just realizing what we had done, and realizing, anything is possible. And one of the, I tell my kids, the other superpowers is being dyslexic. And I mean,
So you are
yeah.
dyslexic.
So you, and all three of my biological kids are also. So when they were told, they're like, "What's this now we need to do?" I said, "Well, this is why I wear headphones wherever I go. This is why I have to put my hands in front of a paper if it's too busy." So you realize that it's life, and you just have to find coping mechanism. And once you know what they are, then it might look very silly and weird to others, where I used to carry learning cards like that to my cousins. Still remember there was a famous club in Pretoria called Gemini, and I would carry my learning cards into the club so that to remind myself what I've learned at school. And in between dancing, I'd go to the toilet and
Cram a few.
yeah.
A few notes.
Yeah.
So looking at the successes you've had, the life lessons you've gained, how do you deal with situations where failure is not an option?
Yeah. And like I said, the bets become bigger.
Yeah.
So in our portfolio, like anyone, you've got the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're dealing with a portfolio company which shouldn't be in the position it's at, and we take responsibility for appointing the wrong CEO and CFO. And when that happens, you remember that everything that you do from here on, it's about your reputation. So you make sure, and the people that you've employed and their families, whether you think the sensible thing is closing it, you keep it going, and you restructure, reformat, bring in teams, and God willing, we think we will rescue the business this year, and make sure that people continue having jobs. And we're talking to an international that might take a stake in it. So, but lessons from that is people are everything. You could have the most brilliant business and concept, but the appointment of two people could just result in its downfall. And you learn from there that never to repeat the same mistake, and for the next business to spot it afar, So and it's not just about people that work in the business, it's the partners that you invest in the business with. Because if you don't have the same ethos, the same drive, the same focus, then you're bound to fail.
Yeah. So what questions have you learned to ask before you hire people? Like that will give you an adequate indication that betting on this person or including them in your business is the right decision.
I think also I've learned, if somebody has been in business for a while and there's noise around them, like, just check the noise. And because where there's noise, there's a story, and look into it more before just saying, well, I spoke to two people who said that noise is nothing, you know?
Yeah.
And also, it's not just about the paper interview. So now we actually give people practicals. We're like, here's a situation. Tell me how you'll deal with it. And that then you'll see the person's reaction. How long do they take? Did they complete it? Did they ask you questions? Or did they just assume this was the solve you were looking for? So that's a lot. And then culture is also important. You have to actually have people around your teams, have people around your investors, because unfortunately, South Africa being South Africa, race still plays a big role in culture. And once you get one person wrong, they could collapse the stack of cards that you built just by having the wrong culture.
Yeah. When you realize that the person doesn't quite fit the job, have you had an incident where you've had to let go of people, and how do you deal with the conflict? Because a lot of us are empathetic. A lot of us care for families. And it's usually quite difficult to make calls like that. How do you navigate situations like that?
I always say to people, I'm the nicest person until you risk my kids' money.
I love that. I also say, like, guys, I'm trying to get paid. I'm literally just trying to get paid.
So I'm patient. I'll support people, but I always say to people, I'm just the custodian. It's not mine. I'm working for a generation and future generations. So when you risk their livelihood, then I switch very quickly to supportive, to managing performance, to out. So you have to, especially at a senior level, you have to make sure you spot those who are going to help you create jobs and those who are going to help you disrupt versus those that are here just to earn a living and do nothing else, because the economy has shrunk so much. It's not that you're going to build the next thing that looks like somebody else's business. You have to actually look at sectors and say, what's wrong with the way they are approaching the sector, and how could you launch a business this late that disrupts how either products are delivered, how they're made, or how brands are perceived. And then you're doing something.
Let's talk about a specific story where a failure happened or things didn't go your way and you had to deal with pivoting. So, like, if you can give us details just to paint the picture and how you got to a point of pivoting.
Yes. So, I mean, our latest venture, which my dear wife, I think she's part of my encouragement to have kept it going. We were trying to build utility services in townships and secondary cities, because actually you can imagine, I think half of Melrose now doesn't have power because one substation is gone. So you can imagine in townships how often it happens that people go without water, electricity. So we came up with a concept. I hired engineers, I hired project managers, and they just got it wrong. Like, from designs to I had to let go and part ways with the entire team.
Sure.
And
how many people is this?
I think it was at least 10. And so we went from having a floor with engineers and screens, and I just dismissed everyone, parted ways, and remodeled the business. And whilst remodeling it, load shedding goes away. And then we're like, okay, now we've got all this spark. What do we do with it? And I said, people, don't panic. There's fundamentals of why this business was set up. The utilities under pressure, the regulators under pressure. They can't provide this right service at the right price. Then fundamentals are correct. So then you go back to the drawing board and say, if I believe that Eskom as a utility can't provide at the right price, can't give you security of service forever, and the regulators under pressure to liberalize the sector, what is it that we can do differently? Then we started charting, and I said to my wife, come up with a new brand, look and feel. And she came up with a brand called Bolite. And she said, here's Bolite. It's like a meteor. Wherever it strikes, it makes a very big impact. And I looked at it and I said, okay, so it's not about power. It's about service delivery. What is it in service delivery that's gone wrong? Is water. Can you put up a water treatment plant? And if you need to run all of them, what do you need? You need connectivity. If you now have decentralized systems, what is the issue? Security. So I said, okay, how do we put that in one product that the end user can believe in, and it's a value product? So if they go and try and procure those products individually, they can never get them cheaper than we can give it to them as a service. And we pivoted Bolide into that space and focus mainly on B2B and multi-dwelling, so apartment blocks like this. And we've, in the process, took our billing engine, which is called Fungi Energy, which takes each apartment, reconciles water, electricity, gas, and we use that as our credit wrap. So it doesn't matter whether this business can pay its rent, we will collect for utilities on a daily basis. So we don't call it a prepaid service. We just wrap it with a wallet, and we convert that into a daily service. And we use that, then attached it to Bolide. And now Bolide is a fully functional business. We've got a very impactful client in Reimagined Retail Fund, which is run by Alt Capital Partners. And we've got office blocks in Centurion. We've got as clients, and we've got multi-dwelling Southtown View and other apartment blocks. And we're going to launch the first, we think, is the first off-grid industrial site in Atteridgeville. We spent 6 million rand taking them off-grid. So they've got zero attachment to the services of the uni from water and electricity. And we're about to put AI security to it. And hopefully it stays Black-owned and controlled. You know, I always say when you stand on that site, you want the next black child to remember there was another guy, I always say Baria Soshangupe, that actually made it work.
Yeah. So in that story, there was a moment where you realized that whole floor of engineers needed to go.
Yeah.
Thinking back to your process that you had applied to hire them, to define their roles, to determine how many of them you needed.
Yeah.
What steps did you miss, or did you as a collective team miss, that led to resourcing in that way?
Yes, I think it's an important question. I think I let others hire for a startup. You actually, as the founder, you must hire every single person. You must be involved in the interviews, know what gap you're filling, know who you don't need for now, because also you have to bootstrap startups, make sure people can multitask. And but the main lesson is, in a startup, founders must hire every single person until a stage of their business.
And outside of hiring, and I'm thinking now at the point where you and your wife are even calculating the expense involved in hiring, like at that point, given the startup nature of the business, what made the expense palatable? That to the extent it was executed.
Yes. So one is fortunate that over time we've built a balance sheet. So you kind of say, look, again, it's our kids' money. Make sure you manage it responsibly, and we made sure that, I mean, for the longest time between myself and her and others at the office, we from legals modeling, we were sort of multitasking, and you, in the process, you do spend slightly more than what you anticipated when you let go of people, because you realize that the value that you got back from them versus what they were supposed to do, it's not that. And now we can see a line of sight of a 400 million rand funded book over what used to be 2 years ago a startup. And we believe it's probably going to be one of the biggest utility integrated funding platform, where a person just calls one place, and we're building this, what we call the concierge. So we call it the Bolide concierge. You call one place and you got all your services, But it's building business from scratch. It's fun. It's because you look in the room. I mean, it's you. Before you started, there was one person, and now we can see we're going to create jobs, and the fun part about it is young people can participate in this new economy, because as long as you're technically sound and you can intellectually process what you've been asked, it takes about 6 months to start adding value.
Sure.
It's no longer 5 years.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. In fact, I would get frustrated when people say, "Oh, you will really start to make impact on this business in a year or 2 years." I'm like, why? Why would you give me 2 years to make impact? Let's talk about how you, as Khudu, cultivate courage to keep taking these big bets in business. What is it in your makeup that you protect so that you can keep your bravery, I guess,
Sure.
in place, sir?
Yeah, I truly believe that any business that today is not looking out 5 years of what's going to disrupt them will be disrupted. So I keep saying to all the management teams, I said, today, if you look, even when we started DFA, I mean, we looked and said to the CEOs back then, is it a B2B only play? And everyone was like, yeah, no, we'll never, I mean, nobody will ever switch from ADSL at the homes and, you know, and a group of what used to be our PMOs at that business then left being our consultants and then started in Parkhurst knocking on people's doors and then formed Vumatel.
Ah, really? So they came from
And
your ecosystems.
Wow. And they spotted the gap, and we kept on saying to our CEO back then, I think there is a business in fiber to the home. Then we went to Parkview, but because that team didn't quite believe in it versus the guys, Neil, Joey, I forgot who the third person was. They then developed the processes of piloting, then scaling, you know, and you can see that you need to have an inquisitive mind of saying, if I've invested in this business and I'm not going to sell it in 5 years, what is it today that we must do to avoid being disrupted? So that's what keeps me sort of looking at this and saying, what's going to happen? I mean, we've recently launched a energy, water and gas fund called Energize Capital. And we're taking big bets to fund infrastructure in energy, water and gas. But I always say, what is it? Once we've funded the infra, the generation, who's building the technology that will allocate the electrons? Who's building the technology that will do the power ledger? How do you actually pay? And who's building the electrons that will manage loads? So then that inquisitive mind keeps searching, and hopefully combined, then you create value for your investors.
Yeah. What fears do you have when you just think of all of the things that are going on in your business life right now, and I guess your family life? What fears do you have?
I think hiring the wrong people and not spending enough time with my kids. That's my biggest fear. So because those are linked. If I hire the wrong people, I don't spend time with my kids. And so I keep saying I need to get better at hiring the right people, because that will automatically take care of the business, and then that will reduce the amount of time I spend in the business, and hopefully spend more time with the kids and my wife. And
Yeah. Do you ever think about, I don't know if you had this, people who didn't think you would get to where you are?
Yeah.
Whether it's people in your family or people in your friendship circles, and how do you respond to those people now? Because some of us are like, yeah, they said I would never be able to do this. They said, look at where I am now. How do you respond to naysayers?
Funny, I keep teasing my wife because we grew up 5 houses away from each other.
Did you?
Yes, but never met. And I always tease her. I said, I was that nerd that you just looked at Babstra. And then as an adult, you looked at me, no, but on a serious note, I guess for me, there was never a need to have cheerleaders. It was about making the world know about my dad. So that's what drove me. So I said, look, he was, I think in 97 when he died, it was probably the hardest year I experienced. And I always said I wrote on a piece of paper that one day I'll make you proud. So, and I still have that piece of paper, and I focus. So even the foundation is named after him. Even what if some of my initials I use in some of the things I do, it's actually his initials. And so that drove me without need to have cheerleaders. So even if there were people who thought I couldn't, I probably just blocked out their noise and just focused on what I knew I needed to do.
Yeah. I talk about playing my own music, and sometimes when one is doing stuff that challenges the status quo, you're taking big risks in a corporate environment or even in your personal life. I always visualize a boxing match, and how when a boxer doesn't want to hear the voices in the audience, and sometimes you don't even want to see your child cry because you are about to confront the biggest fight of your life. And I think it's similar to you, just blocking the noise out and listening to the thing within you that kind of keeps pushing you forward and saying there are possibilities if you just trusted your gut. What's the role of gut in Khudu's decision-making process?
It's everything. You know, if my gut tells me there's something to be done here, I'll sit and until it says a different message, then I don't give up. Or if I meet people, you know, I always say to my wife, it's about the energy levels. And you sometimes meet a person and you say, no, I actually don't want to meet them again. And people will ask me why, and I'm like, no, don't worry, it's okay. I don't want to meet them again. You know, so the gut plays a big role in how I make my decisions, and also believing there's something greater than you that drives that gut, the feeling. You know, we always think it's just us, but it's I think something greater than us saying, I'm just protecting you, just watch out. You know, it's not just a happy or sad feeling. It's a message that directs you.
Yeah. When you think of Dad now, what do you think he's thinking when he looks at
he
the
likes
day
say,
you've walked?
as a petty man, his favorite exclamation was "Sakalabon." You know, it's like, it's like, have you ever seen something like this? You know, so my mom always says, because now my mom lives with us, she always says, oh, I'm sure he's sitting there saying Sakalabon, you know, and we hope we're making him proud. And for me, that is truly what drives my business life, and also, I guess, what drives my family life, because he's guided a lot of what I do. So with my kids, I try and guide what they do, who they are. I always say to them, greet, say thank you. And when they go out for sleep outs, the families will call us and we thought they would be asking for restaurants. I said, what for? You just give them pap and give them pizza, you know, they'll be fine. And they'll say, but they're always saying thank you. We're feeling guilty because it's always, I said, don't worry, just let them be. And I think that I picked up from my dad.
Yeah. What are you teaching your kids about failure? What's the conversation in your household when the school results? And show me what you have hoped your kids achieve. Or a school game hasn't gone right. What's the conversation in the car like with the kids?
I always ask them, were you the only one that lost out? And I was like, no, it was a team. And like, now, gather yourself together and learn from it, and try again, and you'll be successful. So from their academic results, and I always say, just come tell us when you're struggling. Let us guide you and give you the support, because challenges and failures are going to happen. You're just experiencing them as a child, and pick yourself up, and my mom used to say, they're just crying. It's not blood, and
It's just tears.
yeah, and and people then realize that, look, the pick yourself up, learn from it, and make sure the next time you do better, and it's never that easy, because for them it feels like the end of the world, and it is important to teach our kids to handle failure, because we've heard horrific stories of what kids have done to themselves because they didn't realize that it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. So when you are, we're now nearing the end, when you are in a space where things haven't gone right according to plan for whatever the reason, what are the 3 things you do to help you shake it off? Because like there is a 24-hour rule sometimes in sports that says whether you've won or lost, 24 hours, shake it off, because you've got another game to confront. What would be, I like thinking in 3s, like what are the tools you use or the methods you use to shake off a loss or a decision gone wrong?
Yes. My running plays a big role. So running and my music. So that's the first thing I do. I just put on my pods and I go out for a run. And I literally, as I run, I process through my mind what could have gone wrong, what could we do better, and get back and then outline some of the sort of decisions I've made whilst running, and then I'll put them. So in my study, there's a whiteboard, and I'll scribble on it. And then sit back and just think thoroughly before making the next decision, because sometimes you could make a decision too quickly without processing and realizing that sometimes just parking for a day or 2 is the right decision versus the next decision, So, and you, as a leader, you have to be the last one that shows fear. Yeah, because the minute you show,
it's your money and your signature and your stakeholders. You must be the last one to exhibit fear.
Because when you do, it's game over. I just think if the team looks at you and they can see you're about to give up, they can see you, and I know even with this business that we're turning around, like, the guy who's doing the turnaround, every time he'll walk in and I could see he's had a bad day. Like, everything just went wrong. And I'll start off with, this is what happened at the startup. I had to let go of this person, and I had to do this work myself. And then he looks at me and says, I was about to tell you something that maybe I'm not the guy for this, but I'm going back. So I think as a leader, you can influence the outcome by being the one who shows the least amount of fear. But also, you have to also know when, okay, you've done your best, and gradually sort of send that message, but you have to be the last one that shows fear.
I always find that knowing when to walk away is quite difficult, because sometimes in business there's a thing around how big is this hole, and how much of my own resources sometimes am I willing to keep plugging the hole. And then there's a point where you've got to draw the line. But what becomes difficult, which is why I do this a podcast, is the what will people say part. What will the neighbors say part? What will my friends say? If you left a corporate job, how do you go back to a corporate job? Because it's sometimes it's filled with shame and how would you advise someone who is needing to let go of the shame and to walk away from the money that feeds the children, kind of because, how big can a monster get?
Sure. And it's a culture thing, in the US, failure is a lesson and you start again, and people don't punish you for it, Where in South Africa, it's a culture thing where somebody fails, they'll remember that, oh, that person didn't succeed in their first. They don't say, what have they learned from that failure and what are they doing about it in their next venture, and which is, I think, that culture exists in the US. I remember when I left JP Morgan, I was fortunate that I didn't spend a lot in the UK, so I knew I had 15 months worth of savings. And the rule was the day I asked my ex-wife for a bond payment, I go back.
Oh, really? So you had that much?
I got 3 months to it, by the way. So I was 3 months away from it.
Sure.
And I was staring it in the face saying, okay, now you got 3 months and then you're going back to corporate. And then we struck it lucky with a venture that we went into and then started getting at least half our market salaries, and but mine was the day I asked for her to pay the bond.
Payments, then then it's time to call it quits. Let's talk to Khudu, who's young, 30, about to quit JP Morgan. What would you say to that person as far as they need to prepare mentally for the next phase of their adventure, in terms of the highs and lows that life will bring their way?
Is make sure in each role or journey you embark on that you understand your role in it. So, for instance, the young Khudu quit his job, got married, and started business. So, and did I balance all of them correctly? No. Something breaks along the way. And like I always say to my ex-wife, if we don't count our divorce as a failure, then we haven't learned, So you realize that you need to take responsibility of every role that you play, because the impact of something like a divorce impacts the kids, impacts the communities you form, so that you must treat as another role. And in business that somebody said, what's your goal? The young Khudu wanted to make a number at 40, and then I was going to quit. Yeah, so I had a number, and that number was so superficial because there was a businessman, I've never met him, but it's Mzikumalo.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, I've heard of him.
And he, in the newspaper, he said, no, if you've got this number,
5
you live
million,
it,
10 million, whatever.
you live a good life. Your family can afford to fly business class. And I was reading a story, and I was like, oh, that's a number, And then as Khudu then sort of went in his 30s, then you realize business is about helping others. It's the weirdest thing. You think it's about you and making money, but it's about helping others. And in the process of helping others, you make money, And the young Khudu has zero appreciation of that because all he saw is an article by Nzikumala and and I took that as golden, Yeah.
Yeah, and lastly, what do you define corporate politics as? I love asking those questions.
Yes.
What is corporate politics?
Yes. And it's an important question because when I see it in my offices, I always say people, I left corporate at the age of 29. Yeah. So when you then have to play cover my back and you blame others and you watch others fall when you could help them, for me, that's corporate politics. Because as a team, you are collectively responsible for the outcome and you need to be aligned to get to the goal together. Otherwise, if there are noises around, there's people who, the minute I said to our group FM, I said, Natalie, it's like there's a third force somewhere. And He's like, yeah. I said, yeah.
Third force.
Yes, there's a third force, and we need to find it and rip that third
That
force,
invisible
yes, out
force,
of our group, because you quickly can spot, because the minute you make changes, you realize where the third force was, and for me, that's corporate politics. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the end. Cheers to failure with
Yeah.
Khudu. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Time went by so fast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were just getting started.